We're here today on RealAgriculture.com. We're with Andrew Campbell. He is the interactive media editor with Farms.com. Welcome today, Andrew.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean.
Okay, Andrew, we're going to talk about Ontario agriculture this week. Basically, we were just chatting, thumbing through some of the magazines, going through some of the websites like Farms.com. It seems there's a real lack of contentious issues right now in Ontario. Is that really the case?
Well, it's certainly quiet. I think the issues, simmer away through the summer. I mean, every year you do get that element of, okay, right now wheat harvest is in full swing here in Ontario. It's a case of producers are more concerned with that, so it is quieter. Now, that said, is that, certain years you'll have, okay, these are still issues, we're still going to work on them, we're just not going to be as vocal, or it's not going to be the focal point for us. This year really does seem to be a lot, even quieter than that, hog and beef prices are certainly better than they've been. That was a big issue through the winter. This idea of bringing commodity organizations closer together to try and give that one voice attitude towards government. I think it's still going on, but, farmers are too busy to really worry about it. It's just been, quiet.
One of the things that hasn't been quiet is discussions around how good the crop is in Ontario. The wheat, as we interviewed Peter Johnson last week on Real Ag, the wheat harvest is off to a great start, but the soybean and corn crops look pretty above average as well. Is that true?
I think that certainly helps too, in that wheat harvest, it's coming off in pretty good shape. The only real issue has been the weather. It's just, usually you have the ability to wait a couple of days, let it dry in the field, and then take it off dry. That's not really been the case in certain areas of the province. It's very variable right across the province. Some got it off right away and are done. Other areas, you get a shower every other afternoon, and so it kind of stops you for a day. And, that's been probably the biggest challenge with the wheat harvest. But that every other day shower, along with the heat and humidity we had the last couple of weeks, the beans have been taller than I've seen them for a long time. Corn looks great, as long as you're not getting too much moisture. That's been probably the biggest issue for some producers, is too much moisture, so then you get some pretty uneven crops. But for the most part, I'm going to be really disappointed if the soybeans don't come off as, record for us, certainly. Corn close to it. And then, once we get this wheat off, I think, we've got a stretch of sunshine here for the next week. I think wheat's going to pretty much wind up and look really good.
So based on these great crops, we obviously got the yield component taken care of. How about prices? How does the profitability look kind of for some of these farmers?
Well, I think generally, are we in record territory? No, but wheat's come off, and wheat prices have been surging the last few weeks. So I know for us, I've never contracted wheat as we're taking it off. That's what a lot of producers are doing right now, to say, well, I'm taking this crop off in a week or two. I'm going to contract it now because the price is, over $5 a bushel. Let's do that. So it's been a case of, that certainly helped. We contracted some beans the other week too because they were doing pretty well. I know some were contracting corn as well. It's been, it's certainly not record prices, but profitability-wise, you're at least breaking even, if not doing fairly well on top of that.
Anything happening on the supply managed front with dairies? I see in the Ontario Farmer there was some issues as far as they want to raise the some of the marketing funding and things like that. But otherwise, is there anything else happening in Ontario on the dairy
front? Not really. I think the big thing with supply management, the big issue that always is front and center is the idea of world trade talks. Since that really seems to be off the table right now, it's not a concern. I know, we ourselves are in the dairy business. The biggest issue there has been quota access. They capped the price of quota at $25,000 a kilogram. And so now, the advantage is that everybody can afford the quota now. The disadvantage is that everybody can afford the quota. So if you want it, you're probably going to get, maybe 0.1 to 3 kilos of quota any 1 month, even if you need 10, 20, or 30 kilos. So that's probably the biggest issue, but it's still, everybody's kind of waiting to see on that front, whether quota becomes more available before they decide whether they're on board with a policy or not. But otherwise, turkey barns are still going up around the area. Chicken barns are, egg barns are. So, things seem to be fairly optimistic there as well.
So basically, when can we expect corn and soybean harvest to kind of begin?
Well, it's going to be early this year. I remember doing corn silage in October last year. This year, we may go at the end of August. Now that's, corn silage. So, we're probably talking about once we get into September, people are really going to be going wild getting beans off. And then, the way the corn crop is developed too, I think it's going to be ahead of schedule. So, usually you'd do soybeans, wait a couple of weeks, get corn off. I think the way it's been growing so far, corn is going to be pretty close to after soybean harvest. So by the time we hit September again, combines are going to be going wild.
So the Ontario oilseed and grain farmer is definitely going to have a pretty compact, busy harvest, and the challenge will be to try to get all the things done at once, it sounds like.
I think that'll be probably the biggest challenge. The nice thing about it is we had a similar challenge last year, except it was in October, so you're late. You're more worried about frost, you're more worried about moisture, you're more worried about are you going to be able to get winter wheat into the ground. This year, at least, the way it looks now, we're going to have a leeway at the end of harvest to be able to get, there's a lot of expectations for quite a bit of winter wheat to go in because everything will be so far advanced and actually be able to get off and get winter wheat in pretty early, comparatively speaking. So I think the advantage with it being so tight is that at least, we've got, a couple extra weeks at the end of harvest if, it starts raining, if it's not quite ready, whatever the case may be.
So could this hurt maybe the attendance at things like the Outdoor Farm Show in Woodstock? Basically, it could be plunk right in the middle of harvest?
Well, it could be. The thing is that I don't remember an Outdoor Farm Show where it didn't pour rain at least one day. So it's, I think, usually you do get, a rain or two through September. As long as you get that, I think it won't make a big difference. But I think that there is the potential there that at least there will be less producers at those types of shows, if things keep going the way they are.
Perfect. Andrew, thanks a lot for joining us today, and we will chat again very soon.
Great. Look forward to it, Sean.